Welcome to Eclipse Horror Stories, where the ordinary turns terrifying. Every week, we bring you chilling true-style horror stories, night shift nightmares, urban legends, and spine-tingling encounters that will keep you looking over your shoulder. If you love true horror, scary narrations, and creepypasta vibes, you've found your home. Hit subscribe and join thousands of horror fans who never sleep alone after dark. Don't just watch the fear, be part of the Eclipse horror community. Because when the lights go out, our stories begin. I never thought I'd end up in a place like that, but when your life falls apart, you'll take almost anything that comes your way. A year before all this, I had a decent job, a fiancée, and a plan for the future. Then one mistake snowballed into another. I gambled away money I didn't have, borrowed from the wrong people, and lost the woman I thought I'd marry. By the time winter rolled around, I was broke, tired, and desperate. That's how I found myself in a small town outside Los Angeles. Broke down in my car on the way north, scrolling job ads on my phone with the last of my data. Most places wanted experience or references I couldn't give, but one ad stood out. Night shift attendant needed. Midnight Express gas station. Apply in person. Immediate start. It felt too good to be true, but I didn't have the luxury of being picky. I followed the directions out of town and found the station sitting alone off a quiet stretch of road. It didn't look like much, just two cracked pumps under a flickering canopy and a single convenience store with buzzing neon in the window. There was another gas station a few blocks back, bright and clean with a Chevron sign. This one looked forgotten, almost abandoned. Still, I pulled in. Inside, the smell hit me first. Old coffee, dust, something sharp underneath like chemicals. The shelves were half-stocked. Chips long past expiration, a cooler humming louder than it should. Behind the counter stood a man in his late 50s. He had a face like weathered stone and eyes that didn't blink enough. "You hear about the ad?" he asked. I nodded, clutching the strap of my bag. He looked me up and down like he was measuring how long I'd last. Then he pulled out a folder from under the counter and slid a single sheet of paper toward me. "Read this," he said. At first, I thought it was a contract. But when I looked closer, I realized it was a list. Rules. 10 of them, typed neatly with numbers down the side. 1. Always keep the front door locked after midnight. 2. If you hear your name whispered from outside, do not answer. 3. A child may come in asking for help. Do not follow them outside. 4. If a black sedan pulls up and no one gets out, turn off the lights and hide. 5. Never pick up the ringing payphone. 6. Do not look directly at the security monitor between 3:10 and 3:15 a.m. 7. If you see someone who looks exactly like me, don't let them in. 8. If frost forms on the inside of the cooler, leave it shut. 9. At sunrise, unlock the door, make coffee, and pretend nothing happened. 10. Under no circumstances should you quit during your first shift. I laughed nervously and asked if he was joking. He didn't smile. "Take it serious," he said. "Follow the rules and you'll be fine. Break them and, well, I won't have to explain." It was insane, but I signed anyway. What else was I going to do? I needed money, and he was offering cash under the table. By 11:30, he handed me the keys, showed me how to work the register, and walked out without another word. I was alone. The clock ticked toward midnight. At first, nothing happened. A couple of late-night drivers filled up at the pumps, paid in cash, and drove off. I sat behind the counter, sipping bitter coffee, checking my phone. I told myself the rules were some kind of sick joke. Then, a little after 1, I heard it. Faint at first, drifting in through the locked door like a breeze. My name. whispered softly, drawn out, like someone standing right outside. I froze. Again, the whisper. Louder this time. Hey, come here. I forced myself not to move, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles ached. Through the glass, I saw nothing but the empty pumps under the flickering canopy light. The whisper came once more, closer now, as if the speaker was right against the glass. And then silence. I sat there for nearly half an hour, my heart pounding. That was when I realized this wasn't a joke. The rules were real. I stayed frozen behind that counter long after the whisper stopped, staring at the glass door like something was going to push its way through. When nothing did, I tried to laugh it off, but the sound that came out was dry and weak. I kept reminding myself of the rule: if you hear your name whispered from outside, do not answer. I hadn't answered. That had to mean I was safe, right? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was out there was waiting for me to make the wrong move. The rest of the store was silent except for the buzz of the lights and the endless hum of the cooler in the back. I tried distracting myself by stocking shelves and wiping down the counter, but every creak in the walls made me jump. At some point, I sat back down and pulled the rules closer, reading them over and over like they might save me. That was when I heard the faint tapping. It came from the window on the far side of the store, soft at first, then sharper, like fingernails clicking against glass. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The tapping stopped, replaced by a different sound, a small, muffled cry. "Please, help me!" It was a child's voice. I gripped the edge of the counter so hard my hands started to cramp. My eyes went straight to Rule 3. A child may come in asking for help. Do not follow them outside. The crying grew louder, more desperate. Whoever it was, they moved toward the door. A moment later, I saw a figure through the glass. A little boy in a red parka, maybe 7 or 8 years old. His face was pale, pressed close to the door, tears streaking down his cheeks. "Please," he whimpered. "My mom's hurt. You have to come. She's in the road. Please, mister, she's bleeding." He banged on the glass with tiny fists, and each thud shot through me like a jolt of electricity. My whole body screamed at me to help him. But the rules said not to. I backed away from the counter, shaking my head. "I can't," I whispered under my breath, as if he could hear me. The boy's sobs turned sharper, angrier. "You're just gonna let her die," he shouted. His voice deepened strangely on the last word, stretching it out into something guttural. And then he smiled. It was quick, just a flicker across his face, but it wasn't the smile of a child. It was too wide, too knowing. He banged the glass one last time and then turned, walking back into the night. I expected to see him disappear into the lot, but the second he stepped past the canopy light, his entire body seemed to dissolve, melting into the dark like he'd never been there. I stood there shaking, my throat dry, whispering to myself like an idiot. "Not real. Not real. Not real." The digital clock on the register read 2:07 a.m. Still 4 more hours until sunrise. I didn't sit down again after that. I paced the store, forcing myself to check the aisles and corners even though I didn't want to. My nerves were so frayed that when the payphone outside started ringing, I nearly screamed. The shrill sound cut through the silence, over and over. I glanced at the rules. Never pick up the ringing payphone. The phone kept ringing. 10 times. 20. 30. It didn't stop. It was like whoever was on the other end knew I was counting, waiting to see if I'd break. After what felt like forever, the ringing stopped. I sagged against the counter, shaking with relief. But then my cell phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Hello?" Static hissed on the line, And then I heard the same whisper from earlier, the one that had called my name outside. Only this time it was inside my ear, so close it felt like someone was leaning over my shoulder. "Why didn't you open the door?" I dropped the phone on the counter and stumbled back, staring at it as if it were alive. The call ended by itself. My phone screen went black. The rules hadn't said anything about my cell. I grabbed the list and stared at it again, like the words might change to fit what just happened. They didn't. The rules stayed the same. And I realized something that made my stomach twist. The rules weren't complete. There were things out here that weren't even written down. I shoved the phone deep into my pocket like hiding it would somehow make what I heard less real. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, so I kept them busy by wiping down the counter again and again, even though it was already clean. I told myself I just had to last until sunrise. That's it. Just hold on. But the night had other plans. Around 3 o'clock, I felt the temperature shift. The air turned colder, sharp enough to sting my nose. I thought the heater had cut off, but when I looked up, I saw frost crawling along the inside glass of the cooler. Rule 8 burned in my mind. If frost forms on the inside of the cooler, leave it shut. I didn't move closer. I didn't breathe. The frost spread across the glass in jagged lines, forming shapes that almost looked like words. My eyes blurred trying to read them, and for a second, I swore I saw my own name spelled out in icy letters. Then came the sound, something knocking from inside the cooler. Soft at first, then harder, like fists pounding to get out. I backed up until I hit the wall. "No," I whispered. "I'm not opening it." The pounding grew louder, shaking the bottles inside. One fell and shattered, spraying soda across the bottom shelf. Then, just as quickly, the noise stopped. The frost thinned, melting away, leaving nothing but condensation dripping down the glass. I thought that was it, until I caught movement in the reflection. A face. Not mine. Someone else's face staring back at me from the glass, grinning wide, teeth too many for a human mouth. I squeezed my eyes shut, counted to 10, and when I looked again, it was gone. The clock read 3:09. My stomach dropped. Rule 6. Do not look directly at the security monitor between 3:10 and 3:15 a.m. I spun toward the counter. The small black and white monitor hummed quietly, flickering as the feeds switched between cameras. My body screamed to look, to make sure the store was still empty, but the rule hammered in my brain. I grabbed the rule sheet and held it tight in both hands, staring at the paper until the numbers on the register clicked over to 3:16. Only then did I look up. The screen showed the store empty. Just shelves and flickering lights. But my throat tightened when I noticed the time stamp on the corner. It didn't say 3:16. It said 3:12. The camera had recorded 5 minutes I never saw. I didn't want to know what had walked those aisles while I sat there blind. A sound outside broke my thoughts. Tires crunching over gravel. Headlights cut across the window, bright and sharp. A black sedan rolled into the lot, silent except for the engine's low hum. I nearly dropped the rules. Rule 4. If a black sedan pulls up and no one gets out, turn off the lights and hide. The car idled in front of the pumps. No doors opened. No one moved inside. The windows were tinted dark, so black they swallowed the reflection of the neon sign. I killed the lights and ducked behind the counter, curling low, hard hammering. The engine purred steady, never revving, never stopping. Minutes dragged like hours. Every second I expected the door to burst open, but it didn't. Finally, the sound faded. The headlights swung away. I risked a glance. The sedan was gone, the lot empty again. I stayed crouched, barely breathing, until my legs went numb. I almost convinced myself it was over when the front door rattled. Not a knock, a turn of the handle. The lock held, but someone on the other side was testing it. The metal shook harder, until I thought the glass might break. And then a voice. "Open up. It's me." I froze. It was the boss's voice. The same flat tone, the same tired drawl. "Forgot something inside. Open the door. Rule 7. If you see someone who looks exactly like me, don't let them in." The door rattled again, harder. "Come on. Don't make me wait out here. I'm freezing." I crouched lower, clutching the paper until it tore in my hands. My throat felt raw, but I forced myself to whisper, "You're not him." Silence. Then, the slow scrape of fingernails against the glass. When I finally looked up, my blood turned to ice. It wasn't just his voice. It was his face. Pressed against the glass, grinning. His face was inches from mine, only a thin sheet of glass between us. The man outside had my boss's tired eyes, the same stubble on his chin, even the same faded jacket he'd been wearing earlier. But the grin stretching across his face didn't belong to him. It was too wide, showing too many teeth, pressed so hard against the glass I could see the fog of his breath spreading like frost. "You're going to let me in," he said softly. His lips moved against the glass, but the sound carried inside like he was standing right next to me. I shook my head, clutching the counter. "Open the door," he said again, this time louder, sharper. The handle rattled like it might snap off. I forced myself to look down at the rule sheet, gripping it like a lifeline. "If you see someone who looks exactly like me, don't let them in." That was all I needed to remember. I stayed silent. The thing outside chuckled, low and mocking. "Fine. I'll wait." And just like that, it stepped back into the dark. I didn't see it leave, but when I finally looked again, the lot was empty. My pulse pounded in my ears so loud it made me dizzy. I almost didn't notice the faint scraping sound coming from the back of the store. Slow, steady, like nails dragging along metal. I grabbed the flashlight from under the counter and forced myself to move. The aisles looked normal, nothing out of place. But when I reached the cooler, my breath caught. The frost was back, thicker this time, spreading in jagged veins across the glass. Behind the icy sheet, I saw shapes. Figures. At least 3 of them, pressed up against the other side like they were buried inside. Their faces were pale, mouths moving in silent screams. One of them raised a hand and slammed it against the glass, leaving a smear of frost behind. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. The figures faded, melting into the fog. But before they vanished, one leaned close enough for me to see its face clearly. It was me. I didn't even realize I was running until I slammed back behind the counter, gasping for air. I wanted to leave, to get in my car and drive away, but Rule 10 burned in my mind. Under no circumstances should you quit during your first shift. I didn't know what would happen if I broke that one, but the way things were going, I didn't want to find out. The clock crawled toward 4 a.m. My eyes stung from exhaustion, and my body felt like it had been wrung out and left to dry. That's when I heard it, the payphone outside ringing again. Shrill, sharp, cutting through the store. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the sound drilled through anyway. It rang 20, 30, 40 times. Then it stopped. Relief flooded me for a second, until the ringing started again. This time, it wasn't the payphone. It was the store phone on the wall behind me. I turned slowly. The light above it flickered, the cord swaying even though no one had touched it. The rules hadn't said anything about that phone either. It rang once, twice, 3 times. My hand hovered over the receiver, shaking. On the 5th ring, I snatched it up, ready to scream at whoever was on the other end. But there was no voice. Just breathing. Heavy, labored, like someone standing inches from the mouthpiece. "Who is this?" I asked. My voice cracked. The breathing stopped. A long pause followed. Then, in a voice that made every inch of me freeze, it whispered, "Turn around." I slammed the phone down and pressed myself against the counter, refusing to move. The store was silent except for the buzz of the lights. I didn't turn. I couldn't. Minutes passed, maybe more. I never checked. I just stared straight ahead until the clock read 5:30. Half an hour left. That's when the front lights flicked on by themselves, flooding the lot in white. My stomach dropped. I hadn't touched the switch. And parked right there, under the canopy, was the black sedan. The engine off. No one inside. But this time, the door opened. The driver's side swung wide, but no one stepped out. The car sat silent, the door yawning open like a mouth waiting to swallow me whole. I stared at it through the glass, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles popped. "Stay put," I whispered to myself. "Don't go near it." But the rules didn't cover this. They only said hide if no one got out. Someone, or something, had opened the door. That meant the rest was up to me. For a long moment, nothing moved. The lot was still, silent except for the buzz of the canopy light overhead. Then, from the open door, a shadow spilled across the ground. It stretched long, too long, reaching all the way to the gas station door like it was alive. The shadow stopped just at the threshold. The locked handle rattled once, then fell still. I couldn't take my eyes off the glass. That was the mistake. A sharp crack echoed from behind me. I spun, and the cooler door swung open on its own. Frost billowed out like smoke, coating the floor tiles. Figures stumbled from the fog, pale and dripping with ice, their eyes blank and milky. They dragged themselves toward me, lips moving without sound. I grabbed the flashlight, shining it in their faces, but the beam cut straight through like they weren't fully there. My chest ached with panic. I bolted for the back office, slamming the door shut and wedging a chair under the knob. Inside, it was pitch dark. I fumbled for a light and found an old desk lamp. Its glow was weak, but enough to see the stack of notebooks piled high on the desk. Each one stuffed with pages of handwriting, names, and dates. I grabbed the top one and flipped through. The entries were from people like me. Attendants. Every page carried the same rules, copied over and over, with notes scrawled in the margins. Don't trust the phone. The boy in the parka is not a boy. The boss doesn't come back after midnight. My hand shook as I turned another page and saw the last entry. If you're reading this, and you make it out alive, don't come back.